Hey guys, first review of 2018 and I decided to kick things off with a bang, the Sideshow Gastonia statue. Now for fans of Ankylosaurs, I think there'll be no other statue as admired as this, and it'll be everyone's favorite guy. Gastonia was named after Rob Gaston, an American paleontologist. It lived during the early Cretaceous, about 125 million years ago. It was about 5 meters and weighed about 1.9 metric tons. That's 4,200 pounds. Now for a nodosaur, this actually was fairly medium-sized. And while grown, it's not roughly the size of a barge, it would still be pretty hard to push around, despite what you saw in Jurassic World. Now, the fossil record for Gastonia is actually quite impressive in terms of quantity of bones. The main difficulty has been the disarticulation of the remains, so we only have a best guess for where the spikes went, or even how many spikes Gastonia actually had. Now, of course, the recent find of Borealopelta, another nodosaurid from last year, may soon change that by giving us more understanding of how these plates and spikes might be arranged. Now, this amazing fossil was preserved with the osteoderms in situ, with keratin, skin, and even melanosomes, pigment organelles that give us a clue to color. Now, I'm especially good at extrapolating, but I think anyone can make their own conclusions to what other ankylosaurs would look like based on this amazing find. Now, a quick word about ankylosaurs. Ankylosauria has two families, the ankylosaurids and the nodosaurids. Ankylosaurs are the ankylosaurids are the ankylosaurs that are famous for their tail clubs, while the nodosaurids lack them, having instead flexible tails. What they do have, however, are sharp, dangerous shoulder spikes, and these characteristics are wonderfully obvious on this sideshow, as we'll see in a bit. Now, this is a massive piece. As a low-slung ankylosaur, it would actually be closer to the ground were it not elevated at the back by this rocky incline, which I think is a very good idea because it allows us to see from the front more of the animal. So yeah, from head to tail. Now, this part of the base adds another about 3.5 inches of height. So at the highest point from base to the tail, it's 15.5 inches. Now the base and the statue each weighs 4.1 kilos or 9 pounds. So the whole thing is a massive and very heavy 8.2 kilos or 18 pounds. Now this is very heavy. It's a good thing it's not easy to topple over, but you better make sure your display shelf is solid. Now about 27 inches from the nose to the tip of the tail. For a 5-meter animal, that makes this about a 1:7 scale, which unfortunately means it doesn't scale well with either the Sideshow Triceratops, Stegosaurus, or the T-Rex. Now, just to give you an idea of size, here is my Safari Sauropelta, which actually is one of my most prized models. And it's another nodosaurid, and here you can see the size comparison next to the head. And then next to the spikes. Let's take a closer look at this impressive statue. Now, first of all, I think everyone will be awed and inspired by this, and it's not very hard to see why. The overall impression is one of bulk and power enough to steer that bulk. Now, it's squat with very short stout limbs and also very wide hips, which are characteristic of these dinosaurs. And all of which gives it a very low center of gravity, making it all but impossible to tip over, despite what you may have seen in the Jurassic World movie. Now you look at these limb proportions, you can easily imagine it rotating to face of enemies with these forelimbs, but also generating sudden bursts of power with these very solid, very muscular back limbs. Nice calves, nice ankles. Now the head captures all the classic look of the typical nodosaurid dinosaur. Now it's not as broad in the snout as on a typical ankylosaurid, and of course narrow snouts suggest a more selective diet for them. Now still, as an herbivore, it probably ate every day to help it get large. Now the eyes are beautifully painted with a very lifelike glisten. Here you can see the lifelike glisten a lot better on this side, and there appears to be a ring, a kind of protective ring around the eye. And from the top, you can see how this armor completely shields the eyes from above. And I like very much the horny sheath covering the beak. Just looks so lifelike. I really like the weathered appearance of this statue. You know, it's like you've seen in other sideshows before. This Gastonia looks like, you know, it's got a really weathered, lived-in kind of look. There's nothing picture perfect about this. And, you know, this Gastonia looks like it's been tested. For example, over here, you'll see what looks like cracked skin from years of wear. And up here, you'll see what I think looks like a gash of some sort, a cut or a scar. It's a little bit orange. I'm not sure if you can see it through the camera, but you know, if it's meant to be traces of blood, then it suggests a rather recent engagement. Now the claw sheaths are glossy, and what I like is that they've got a really realistic irregularity about them. You don't see any smooth sharp edges. There's a jaggedness here suggesting places where it might have cracked off before. And you see it here in the back left limb. And closer up, you can also see the detail in each individual claw sheath itself. Look at the individual texture here. So every claw is distinctly different. Now, we've had some well-defended dinosaurs before, like the Triceratops and the Stegosaurus, but I think it's safe to say that in the Sideshow line, there's no one quite as burly and brawny, and you can see it has armor to spare. Not a bit of him is straggly or scrawny, and every last inch of him is covered with, well, not hair, but spikes and plates. Let's look at these a bit closer now. The armor typical of nodal-saurs is very well represented here. Now, Gastonia had spines, scutes, and nodules, making its dorsal surface nearly impregnable from above. Now, any hopes of flipping it over, to get at the underbelly was largely fat hope, given its low center of gravity and weight. Now, most impressive is this array of spikes, so characteristic of nodal-saurs. It's a menacing arrangement. Discouraging attack from above and from the sides. Now, no two are exactly the same. Individual differences like growth lines, cracks, and maybe even pathology can be seen. You can look at the fine detail in each spike here, right here. Look at that texture. Color-wise, I like the general fade from dark to lighter brown and then to almost brown-black at the tips. In fact, I can remove one of them so we can have a closer look. This one over here. And why can I remove this? Well, I'll tell you in a bit. But let's have a look at that detail. And imagine every one of them has got this level of fine detailing on it. It's a really, really awesome sight to behold in person. The scutes are equally beautifully detailed. Now arranged here in transverse rows here and then down at the side. Now each has its own keel. Look at that. It's marvelous detailing. And again, slightly different in size, shape, and color from skewed to skewed. You simply won't find this level of detailing on a mass-produced toy. There are also small ones down the forelimbs here for just that little bit more protection. A license similar to the one we saw taken with the Stegosaurus statue. Now, between these larger features like the scutes and the spines, you'll find hundreds of smaller nodules in a tight-fitting mosaic. Especially upwards here towards the sacral area. Look at the amount of detailing here. It's just really remarkable. So with the sacral shield protecting the rear of the animal, and just here the spikes here protecting the front, I think this is a rather good arrangement because these spikes can be directed where it probably will be most needed against a forward attacking predator, and yet not weighing down the entire animal overly with too much load. And all that here is just the passive defense. But back towards the end, where you might expect a predator to make a sneak attack, we have the active defense. Now, nodal tails were more flexible than the stiffer club ones of Ankylosaurids, and Gastonia has a spiky and flexible tail, with pairs of scutes protecting the dorsal surface here, but also flanking the tail, you've got these laterally directed spikes. And once again, we see again a detailing, and I just love these keels on the scutes. Very nice. And down here, where the head turns, just love the way these spikes actually overlap each other. It's just like, it suggests that there's a flexibility to the neck, but the range of movement isn't limited by the spikes. It seems like nature has designed this animal, engineered in such a way that movement is still possible. Now, defense-wise, I'd say that it's perfect, a pure paragon. If you match its predatory contemporary like Utahraptor, weighing about 1,100 pounds, and of course has that famous second toe sickle against Gastonia's 4,200-pound protected bulk, I think you can ask any Tom, Dick or Stanley and they'll tell you whose side they prefer to be on. Now, as for color, there's obvious counter shading with a darker back and a lighter belly. The dorsal surface is darker than the ventral side, and you can see how the form is broken up quite effectively by looking at the patterns in antelopes, white sharks, and penguins, for example. Interestingly, Borealopelta, discovered last year, had melanosomes, suggesting just such a counter-shading scheme. Now, its back was reddish brown, while the belly was of a lighter color. So there's definitely good support for the choice made here. Our Gastonia is generally green on top and light grey below. You can see that the green at the head starts as a kind of alpine Amazon type green, but towards the back, it becomes more of a faded green. The belly starts off with a more greyish brown kind of green. You can see how the dark upper contrasts with the lighter lower here. Very nice. Up on this side as well. In fact, this color scheme seems to follow closely an illustration of Gastonia I've seen by Mariana Ruiz, and I just wanted to give a shout out here. Of course, being a sideshow, you're going to expect nice added details, right? Such as fades and subtle patterning, and you do see that in regions throughout. For example, you see that in the legs, the elbow regions. I love the way this mottling looks here. See a bit of spotting up here, that patterning down here as well. And of course, once again here, just love the spotting. Here in the cheek area, that's kind of mottling kind of look. Really love it. Just really this subtle, almost like black patterning tracking through the green, and you'll see it up here. Bands of very dark coloring, and I think you should be able to see that in this lighting here. And this kind of patterning really serves to break up the animal even more from the vantage point of a towering predator. So it's all subtleties upon subtleties, and that is what makes this, I guess, a Sideshow Dinosauria collectible. So really, in terms of defense and detail, 10 points for Gastonia. Now let's talk about the base. The base is actually pretty ordinary. This is a rocky incline with some details of mosses, but I actually like how the mix of grey and green kind of balances out and not overwhelms the star of this diorama. Now, one happy thing to note is that the base doesn't have that additional black layer with more recent Sideshow dinosaurs, which I always found to be superfluous and just added too much bulk and weight to the bases anyway. And so this rests directly on the surface, just like my old T-Rex versus Triceratops or Carnotaurus Sideshows. Now, just one little gripe with my Sideshow, which is the forelimbs fit pretty well into the base, but when it comes to hind limbs, it just doesn't seem to want to sit properly. There's a gap there. Just one thing. Remember that spike that could be removed? Well, it's because if you have the Sideshow version, you have the option of removing this and replacing that with this. Now, this is a pterosaur perched on a spike. I don't know what species. I know actually I know next to nothing about pterosaurs, but I'm a fan of anything suggesting reality. And the reality is that these dinosaurs, often depicted alone, are actually part of an ecosystem. And I can imagine that Gastonia could very well be a feeding platform for a few scavengers like this. And note that the magnets are really strong here, so you really want to be careful to jiggle it from the bottom and not try to grab it by any one of these tender bits when you change these attachments. I'm undecided. For some reason, I kind of like the idea of these explosives and the fact they add little things like that. But somehow, for this statue, I like the idea of displaying it with just these spikes. Because after all, that to me really characterizes what an ankylosaur is all about. So I'm probably going to just display it like that. So that's it for this video. I'm really pleased to have this one. What fascinates me about dinosaurs, and I think it's not just me but many other people, is the amazing combination of bizarre features, the size, the shapes, and the ankylosaurs were certainly one of them that I felt was due for representation in the Sideshow Dinosauria line. Now, Gastonia has a balance of so many elements that attracted me to dinosaurs when I was 5 years old, and although I would have loved to have an Ankylosauria with a tail club, I'm definitely happy. As a specimen, yes, it's intimidating, and I have no hesitation giving it 5 hurrahs and 12 hip-hips. So that's it for now, guys. I'm going to be really busy with major change in my life for March, but I hope to see you guys soon with another review, maybe in early April. As always, I welcome your comments. Thank you so much for supporting my channel, even though I haven't been regular with my uploading. And have a great year ahead. Meanwhile, have a look at some photos of this amazing statue. My, what a guy, Gastonia.